What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Blazers Uprise post-game show. Going live a little bit late because me and Eric went to the game. Eric should be on here any moment, but we got a lot to talk about tonight. Oh, speaking of Eric, he almost made it in time for the intro. He literally just called me right, 10 words into the intro. All right, Eric, I'll bring you on here, man. What's up, Eric? No mic yet? Oh, there you go. Oh, you're eating. You called me like 10 seconds into the intro. Anyway, we're both here. We both have a lot to talk about tonight, Eric. Some good news, some good moments. CJ McCollum returns to Portland, gets a standing ovation. I don't know if it was shown on TV or whatnot, but me and Eric were, as I said, both at the game. So that's why we're going live at 10:20. Game ended, 50 minutes ago. So we're going to talk about CJ McCollum. We're going to talk about this game a little bit. It was a pretty comical game to watch at certain points. And then we'll also talk about how the Blazers are now currently 6th place, Eric. 6th place in the lottery standings. They passed up the Kings. It's a miracle. Yep. So we'll talk about if the Blazers can move any higher. I don't think it's likely, I'll just say that. But, we'll take a look at the Tankathon. The lottery odds will simulate it as normal, and we'll take your questions through chat as well. Probably not going to do it. Are you muted? All right, yeah. All right. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Hi, Eric. Yeah, the whole call. Normally I unmute you right when I go live, but since it was just me for the first 10 seconds, I didn't. So there you go. Anyway, what did you say again? Do you want to repeat?
I don't remember. The freaking Kings finally won a game. Thank you.
Yeah, the freaking Kings finally won a game. So the Blazers are 6th place in lottery odds. Anyway,
hello everyone.
Hope everybody's having a good night. If you went to the game, hope you enjoyed the game. It was weird being at a Blazer game, not rooting for them to win. It was kind of easy because it just ended up rooting for CJ McCollum. I wish he popped off for a bigger night because he started off, 6 for 7 from the field? He started off hitting shots. Looking like prime CJ McCollum. Only shot 16 times in 37 minutes, was 9 for 16, 3 for 6 from 3 for the former Blazer in his return today. 25 points, 4 assists for him. And this was a game that was competitive. Portland stuck in this game. We're only down 3 heading into the fourth quarter, and it wasn't even necessarily any one guy. Just they ended up. Part of it was New Orleans struggles to defend, and then part of it was you had some good plays. Greg Brown might need to permanently wear goggles. Reggie Perry in 17 minutes. I didn't realize this, Eric. 15 points. So maybe the Blazers just needed a backup big to screw up the tank.
It was a career high.
Yeah, 6 for 11, and this is a guy who's played in Brooklyn last year, so it's not his first stop in the NBA. Blevins even hit a step-back 3. You just had some guys pulling off some impressive things. There's Didi Lozada's debut. He didn't do too well, but this was a game where there was some solid plays. You had like Keon's big dunk, and this was a game where you had some extremely sloppy plays, and it wasn't just the Blazers; it was both ends. Mm-hmm. What's your synopsis of this game, Eric?
It was pure comedy at times. I love the little trick play by Alvarado who hides on the baseline, pretends he's not in the play, and then sneaks up behind him and steals. Mm-hmm. And then he did it a couple of times later on, not quite as obvious that he was trying to do that, but
they were ready for it because he did it 3 times in a row, man.
If you watch the replay of it, he actually goes and stands on the baseline by our bench, so it completely looks like he is not on the floor, and then he runs all the way around the ref. It goes, that was awesome. And then just it was such a strange game. I don't know. I wanted to ask you, were you in your feelings when CJ got announced or when they showed the video or anything?
Honestly, I don't know what feelings are, but if I knew what feelings were, yes, I would have been in my feelings.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't cry, but my eyes were a little watery, I guess. It was, 8.5 good years with CJ here, and it's kind of weird seeing him play on another team, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize you don't have feelings, but
yeah, if I was a human, I would have had feelings for sure. But yeah, It was weird that they played the tribute video at the timeout after the first quarter. I thought they should have done it before he was announced. I thought it would have been more fitting because the ovation for that wasn't as loud as the initial ovation. Mm-hmm. So,
but then Connor would have missed it.
Yeah, I went to the game with Connor, our mod Connor, and he missed the introductions, the starting lineups. He missed the CJ ovation because he took the tram? What do they call it? The Max. I'm tripping. See, yep. I'm not from Portland, and that's a whole nother thing that I've gotten into in the past day or so. So,
let's not get into that here.
I'm from the Portland metro area, but I'm not from Portland, okay? So, anyway, yeah, so he rode the Max, and he said, I transferred him one of the tickets, because I wasn't going to miss it. I wasn't going to be standing outside waiting for Connor for like 20 minutes. Just to miss CJ McCollum. Like, that's the main reason why I showed up to this game. I transferred him the ticket. He texts me. He's like, yeah, I just got in line 3% on my phone. I'm like, oh my God, this dude's phone's going to die. He's not going to be able to get into the arena. Luckily, he got into the arena. So, watched the game with Connor. You were with your mom?
Yep.
I know we saw clearly a bot, so that was cool.
And Krish.
Yeah. A couple other people were there and didn't, I don't know if they were intimidated by you, Eric, and 6'6" big man. I don't know. There was a couple other people there that we didn't get to meet or run into, unfortunately. But it was a cool experience just to be at a Blazer. It was a packed Blazer game. It was maybe their best attendance since the New Year. I don't know. The attendance hasn't been like that. Was a pretty packed arena. That was a loud arena for his ovation, and then it was just like. Dude, he was getting cheers when he was making shots. Like, Blazer fans were cheering for CJ McCollum. I was one of those Blazer fans, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird dynamic before the game from people trying to explain why it's better for us to win this one instead of lose it. And I don't agree with that.
Who was doing that?
There were plenty of big accounts on Twitter doing that and trying to explain why if we won this game or if we lost it would be bad. Basically they thought we'd lose the Pelicans pick if we won this game. But
what? We lose the Pelicans pick if we won this game?
Well, like if we lost the game, we'd have a greater chance of losing the Pelicans pick. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I mean, here's the thing: the Pelicans are going to make the play-in. Okay,
right?
Like we're not going to beat the Pelicans twice. The Lakers have one of the hardest schedules left in the league. The Spurs. I mean, like it's the Pelicans are going to be in the play-in. Like even if we won today, I still think the Pelicans would have been in the play-in.
But yeah, here's the problem: we win today, and we're not sixth all alone right now. We're still in seventh. So
and here's the thing: this Pelicans team that I saw today, I don't know if it was seeing them in person or watching a full game of theirs, but all of a sudden I'm a lot more comfortable with them not making the playoffs through the play-in. Part of that was Paul George returned for the Clippers last night and looked like he hadn't missed a beat. He had 34 points in his return, so I have more confidence in the Clippers and the Timberwolves being able to play their way into 7 and 8. But I mean, at this point, like the Lakers, if they get AD back, that's going to be a good game. Because I don't think the Pelicans are going to have Zion back by then. He's still out indefinitely. So it's a situation where I don't think we have a lower chance. If they make the play-in, I don't think we have a lower chance of getting the Pelicans pick. Because if they don't win both play-in games, which I don't think they will, their odds for jumping up into the top 4 where we'd also lose their pick, it's going to be lower. So I think it evens out in the end. If they end up 12th and in the play-in, but don't win both playing games, which is most likely to happen, then we're sitting there on lottery night like, okay, they only have a 7% chance of jumping into the top 4 instead of a 20% chance. So I didn't, if we were going to win a game, this would have been the game to win, but, I mean, this is good for the Blazers. They move up to 6th in the lottery standings, and I don't think we were going to keep the Pelicans out of the play-in.
Yep. I'd rather have that extra 5% or whatever it is, 5.2% to move up into the top 4.
Yep.
And Shaggy Squid, you're still worried about the Pelicans catching the Clippers, man? They're up 4 games with 6 to go. Like, are you really worried about it? There's a $5 donation from him. If the Pelicans pass the Clippers, they only have to win 1 game. Dude,
Clippers
they are
have a
not
hard
passing
schedule.
the Clippers. I told you this like a month ago when you were worried about this. It's not going to happen. We don't even waste your time worrying about it.
Yeah, appreciate the $5 dono, but yeah, that's not something to worry about. I agree with Eric. You can actually go to playoffstatus.com and see like playoff odds based on strength of schedule and how good a team has been over the course of the season. The Pelicans, according to playoffstatus.com, they have a 1% chance of being 8th. No chance of being 7th. They have a 1% chance of being 8th. The Clippers right now, based on scheduling and based on, strength of team, have a 99% chance of being 8th. So there's absolutely no reason to worry about that. No reason whatsoever. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, even if they went 6-0, the Clippers would have to be 2-4 just to tie them. Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, we can. Do you want to just jump straight into the tank talk, and we can look at both those team schedules and just kind of the situation, and we can break things down. We try and give you guys a clear of a picture of the lottery and where these teams are. If we were bound for the playoffs, we'd be doing this the opposite way. But it still matters. We can still look at teams' situations, schedules, and try and make predictions or whatnot off of them. Anyway, okay, so Tankathon is here. Let me center it. There we go. So, Portland, beautiful scenes up to 6th. 37% chance of the top 4, 9% chance of the number 1 overall pick. That's probably as high as we're going to get because Indiana is terrible. They lost today. I haven't seen that final score. They made it competitive. They were down like 43-15. I'm surprised they only lost by 7. But Indiana's hardcore tanking, so I don't think we're going to catch them. Feel free to
actually winning in the
were they?
Third, early fourth. Yeah.
Did they really come all the way back from that? That's wow. I mean,
it wasn't all the way back.
Yeah.
They were up a couple in the third quarter. Yeah.
I mean, they erased the deficit. They came all the way back. They still lost the game, but they erased the deficit. So good for them. But they're trying to tank. I don't think they can catch OKC. I think it's looking at Indiana 5th and then hopefully Portland 6th. Portland has one less win than the Sacramento Kings. So if Portland just loses out, they're fine. They're in 6th. Sacramento plays Houston again in their next game. So honestly, if Portland loses their next game against San Antonio and Sacramento wins their next game against Houston, you're probably sitting there pretty comfortable with Portland being at least 6th. It could be a situation where we're locked into our lottery positioning with a couple games left in the season, which would be nice because then you can root for the team if you want to. It doesn't really matter if they lose. So let's just look at the Pelicans and the Clippers, okay? The Clippers are currently 4 games ahead of the Pelicans. The Clippers, the rest of their schedule, they have OKC, they have Sacramento, they have New Orleans. Chicago hasn't been playing too well. I don't see the Clippers losing every single one of these games.
Mm-hmm. Especially with PG.
Yeah, especially with PG. They got PG back and beat Utah last night.
And also, you have to consider this too. The Clippers lose their pick no matter what because it's unprotected to Oklahoma City. So they're not going to want to, or they're not trying to tank like all these other teams are, right? So they want to make the play-in, and they want it to be in the 7-8 game. Whereas if they didn't have, or if they kept their pick this year, if they didn't make the playoffs, you can maybe make a case that they'd be better off, falling down and maybe letting the team pass them. And if they make it in, they make it in. But if not, they get a lottery pick. But that's not the scenario. So they want to be in a situation where they have one game to make the playoffs and then a second one if they happen to lose that one. So they're not going to be tanking any of these games. They're going to be trying to win all 6 of them. So I'm not worried about them one bit.
You're talking about at the end of the season, even if they lose this game to New Orleans, they have to beat Sacramento and OKC, and New Orleans would have to win out just to tie them. I don't think that's likely. In terms of New Orleans' schedule, they got the Lakers up next. They have the Clippers, Sacramento, Portland. Those are 2, easy games. But then Memphis and Golden State. Those are decent teams. Who knows how much they care about those games, but I am absolutely not worried about the Pelicans catching the Clippers. I'm just not.
When's that Pelicans-Lakers game? Is it
April 1st?
So it's Friday.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance AD could be back for that too.
You're rooting for the Lakers in that game, correct?
Well, yeah, I, I still think a Lakers team with AD and LeBron in a one-game scenario is a tougher test for the Pelicans than the Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't. It sucks that the Spurs lost today because the Spurs are now 2 games back in the win column of New Orleans. New Orleans has a game against us left, so I think it's going to be. I think the likelihood that New Orleans ends up out of the play-in is very unlikely. We can actually. This is probably going to be off the screen for you guys. So playoffstats.com says there's a 97% chance that they're in the play-in for the New Orleans Pelicans. So count on them being in the play-in. Don't count on them moving up to 8th. They're going to be 9th. I think the only question is, are they playing at home or are they playing on the road, and then who they're playing against? Because the Lakers currently sitting here at 31 wins. The Lakers need to beat New Orleans in that next game. I don't know if it's the Lakers' next game. Let me look at this. The Lakers play Utah first, so that's probably not a win. That's in Utah. But then second night of a back-to-back, they're playing New Orleans. If New Orleans beats the Lakers in this game, New Orleans, in my opinion, clinches seeding over the Lakers, and honestly probably the 9th seed, because the Lakers are going to be 3 wins back with 5 games left. I don't think they would make that up. So this game on April 1st is very meaningful. If you think the Lakers can catch the Pelicans, they have to win that game.
Yep.
So that's the situation there. Let's take one quick look at Indiana's schedule. Boston, Detroit, Philadelphia twice, and Brooklyn. So, Indiana's lost 5 straight. They beat us, and they beat Houston, and they beat San Antonio. Otherwise, in Orlando. When was the last time they beat a team of the caliber of, Boston, or just a playoff team in general? You have to go all the way back to February 27th. So, more than a month ago. I'm not counting on Indiana winning any game except for Detroit. Maybe they can win twice, but Portland would then have to lose out, and I don't think that's necessarily likely. Here's Portland's remaining schedule. We got San Antonio twice, OKC, New Orleans, Dallas, Utah. I feel like the Blazers have one more win left in them.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the situation there. Sacramento's schedule, I don't know if I've shown. Go ahead.
Space Case says, be careful, guys. We knew the percentage chance of the Suns getting into the playoffs during the bubble year, and they won every game. And did they make the playoffs?
Nope.
They still didn't make the playoffs. That's my point, is they won out 8 games, and it still wasn't good enough to make the playoffs. So,
and that's a complete outlier. You know what I mean? It's yes, it's not mathematically impossible, but all the Clippers have to do they're what? Let me think. Yeah. To clinch at least a tie, all the Clippers have to do is beat the Pelicans at home a couple games from now, because the Clippers play the Pelicans at home on the 3rd of April. If they beat the Pelicans at home, they clinch at least a tie, and that would take the Pelicans winning the rest of their games and the Clippers losing the rest of their games when they got Sacramento and OKC, their last 2 games of the season. So I'm not worried about that. I still don't think Portland's going to catch Indiana. Obviously, I'm rooting for Indiana to win because, if they win their next game, then Portland's only one back in the win column. At that point, yeah, okay, maybe anything's possible. But the Pacers are tanking hard, so I think at this point, Portland is going to be 6th or 7th. You just got to root for Sacramento, and maybe Portland could be comfortably in 6th a couple days from now.
Yeah. And Rahi asks what the Wizards' schedule is, because they could be the difference between getting the 10th or 11th pick as well.
Yeah. Okay. Dallas, Boston, Minnesota, Atlanta, New York, Charlotte. So honestly, I don't know if I want to say easy, but definitely not a hard remaining schedule. You have some fringe caliber playoff teams with Atlanta, Charlotte, Minnesota, a couple good playoff teams, or surefire playoff teams with Dallas and Boston, then a lottery team in New York. So Washington might have a couple wins in here. I just don't think that they are going to pass up the Pelicans. I think at this point, I would count on the Pelicans pick being 12th if we get it, in my opinion.
I think they're going to pass New York too.
Yeah. New York's won 6 out of 10, but New York can't even make the play-in at this point. Or they'd have to win out and have Atlanta lose out. New York does have Washington, Cleveland, Orlando. I said Cleveland like they're a bad team. I'm just used to doing that over the past
lately, actually.
Yeah, so I just count on New Orleans' pick is probably going to be 11th or 12th. I would count on 12th. I think it could be a tie in this situation. But here's the thing. I'm not really worried about the Pelicans' pick being 11th or 12th, Eric, because if it moves down to 12th, right now it's a tie for 10th, so they have a 11.7% chance of the top 4 because it's evened out between 10 and 11. If they move down to 12, in sole possession to 12, they only have a 7% chance of the top 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you're mitigating your risk, and then you're sitting there with a 12th pick, and if the plan is to trade that pick for Jeremy Grant, then... if it's a 12th pick, that's a little easier to stomach than if it's like the 9th or 10th pick. Still not easy to stomach because I don't want that, but, you're sitting there at 12, and honestly, it's like... Let me pull up the mock draft. After you get out of, like, the 8th, 9th pick, you have a lot of even prospects. I mean, Duran would be nice at 10... But at 11 or 12, you're probably looking at like a Sohan or a Dyson Daniels is apparently 6'7" without shoes and can do everything except for shoot. So if he can learn how to shoot, he could be a steal. It could be a guy that could play a small forward and he can facilitate, defend. Agbaji, of course. You could even take a flyer on a Jovic. At 12, you could also trade down. We've talked about trading down from like the 10th, 9th spot, but... you can still trade down from 12, 12 for 15 and 30 if the Thunder want to move up 3 spots. The Thunder currently have the 15th pick from the Clippers and the 30th pick from the Suns. So, that trade is more feasible. That wouldn't be enough from OKC to Portland if the Blazers had like the 9th pick. 9 for 15 and 30 isn't enough for Portland, but if it's 12, that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the thing. I'm not too worried about where that pick ends up, just as long as we get it.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
And having the Wizards losing and the Pelicans falling to 12th doesn't affect their play-in status because those are teams from the East, but it gives us a better percentage chance of keeping it. So I'm totally cool with that.
Yep. And the Pelicans won't go any higher than 12 because 13th is Atlanta. They have 6 more wins. They're the 10th team in the East. The East is very deep this year. So even if it doesn't matter who wins the playing games in the East, it doesn't matter what happens. If we get the Pelicans pick, the lowest it'll be is 12th.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any other questions before?
I don't know, man. I'm sure Shaggy Squid's worried that the Hawks are going to lose out and the Pelicans are going to win out and then fall into that 13th spot.
Oh man, don't do the guy like that. He doted. Anyway,
just teasing you, Shaggy.
That's the last dono we're ever getting from him. Anyway, appreciate the dodo, man. We're just having fun. Anyway, any other questions in chat before I simulate the lottery?
Are the Wizards purposely losing? At this point, I don't see why they wouldn't be.
Because if the Spurs and the Lakers are trying to make the play-in, the Wizards can move up to 8.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's interesting too, is if the Lakers are able to win games and move into 10th, that means if any team below them moves up, then their pick falls to 11th, which it would be Memphis's. But that's what's crazy is, dude, why couldn't we have just gotten like swap rights?
I don't know.
On the Lakers pick and we should get the 9th pick in this situation. The Pelicans should get the 11th pick. The Pelicans should say, thank you for giving us such a good trade. Here, we'll give you the 9th pick. We'll take the 11th.
Yep.
And we give them some cash.
It's still very possible that they end up with both of their picks in the top 10, and we don't get either one of them.
I feel like very possible is a stretch, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Right now, they'd have a 12% chance of moving up into the top 4. But it's looking like they're going to get this Lakers pick. So Washington is definitely just kind of a wild card factor kind of thrown into the middle of this mess of Western Conference teams. You got Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, the Lakers, New Orleans, all bunched together, and you got Washington in here, which is kind of weird. Anyway, let's simulate it and scroll up like we usually do. Reveal it like how they reveal the lottery from 14th on up. 14 Charlotte, 13 Atlanta, 12 New York. We're hoping this is the Pelicans pick. It is. Oh, whoops. Pelicans pick to Portland. Good news on that. At 10, Washington. At 9, you got the Lakers. At 8, you got Sacramento. So that means at 7 it should be Portland, and it is Portland. So we move up to 6, and then we finally don't get lucky on a post-game stream. 6, Detroit. Yep. 5, Houston. 4, OKC. 3, San Antonio. They jump up to 3. 2, Indiana, and then 1, Orlando. Here's the thing, though, is by moving up to 6th, San Antonio jumps up from below both Portland and Sacramento into the top 3, but since Portland is currently worse than Sacramento, they get the 7th pick instead of the 8th pick. The 7th pick instead of the 8th pick. So if Keegan Murray goes like 5 or 6, then you're sitting there at 7. You just probably take Shaedon Sharpe or AJ Griffin, whichever one is left on the board. Of course, you could also take Mathurin there, but 7 is you have a more of a chance at getting a Sharpe or an AJ Griffin if that's the guy that you want.
Yeah.
There, 3, 3rd pick. There we go, and end things off on a right note. 3 and 11. Anyway. That's our Tankathon update of the night. Hopefully you guys have a clear picture of, what we're looking at as we head into the final 10 days of basketball. I guess it's 12 days, but go ahead.
I guess people would want us to answer who we take at 7 and 12 in that scenario, I guess.
Okay. We can do that. I'll bring it back up and look at the mock draft just so you guys have the names on the board. All right.
Oh. AJ, I don't think there's any chance Mathurin falls to 12th. Maybe 11th if some teams fall in love with like Duran and one other player, and Johnny Davis goes ahead of him, maybe. But yeah, it's tough to see a scenario where Mathurin's still on the board at 11 or 12.
Okay, so are we doing it based on if these guys are taken?
Well, let's just assume the first 7, or wait, we got 7, right?
Yeah, so I just simulated it. Now I have it as us having 7.
Okay, so yeah, let's assume. Okay, let's assume that the top 4 are obvious, right?
Yep.
And then the next 3, I think, are pretty certain. It seem like they're pretty locked in. So, out of those 3 guys, you're hoping for Sharpe?
Right now, I'd probably take Sharpe. Yeah.
So yeah, this scenario is pretty good. I wouldn't mind AJ Griffin. I actually wouldn't mind Keegan Murray either, but someone in chat, Mike Posner, says, I don't understand why Murray is seen as a top 10 pick in this draft. I think he's pretty overrated. I think Tori would agree with you there.
No, I don't agree that he's not a top 10 pick, but I do think he's a little bit overrated, yes. I do agree with that. I've played devil's advocate with Keegan Murray with Eric for a month now.
Yeah. But the guy can score. He can get a shot. He's a very solid defender. So a lot of positives there. But understand his upside athletically. Might
feels like a high caliber role player to me. I'd rather go with a guy who's maybe riskier that I feel like has more upside. So that's why I'd take Sharpe. I'd go Sharpe, Griffin, Murray. Honestly, though, if Sharpe and Griffin were off the board at 5 and 6, I would probably take Mathurin at 7 instead of Keegan Murray.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that, assuming, once again, that his measurements are decent enough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's the thing with all these conversations. I just want you guys to know that it's dependent on how they measure. So Benedict Mathurin is listed as 6'7". I'm just gonna assume he's 6'7" for now, just based on this measurement. But if he goes to the combine and measures 6'4.5" without shoes, then my opinion on taking him over Keegan Murray probably changes. So all of our opinions are subject to change depending on what these guys' actual measurements are. Because a lot of prospects, in my opinion, are relatively close to each other in certain tiers, like these top 3 with Banchero, Smith, and Chet. All 3 guys are very close. Same thing with Sharpe and Griffin, and then same thing with like Murray and Mathurin, Johnny Davis. That matters. And here's the thing, like Dyson Daniels, I need to watch his game, but he's intriguing to me, so he could jump up here into the top 10. I just have to watch him play. Because he's one of those guys where if he can just figure out how to shoot, he's going to be a really, really good player, it sounds like. So this is his stats. Because this is a guy we haven't really talked about, Eric. And
just needs to develop a shot, but...
Yeah, statistically, this is playing in the G League Ignite, only 14 games, but supposedly he's a really good defender and can pass the ball, can handle the ball, can basically play point, but has the size to play small forward. I mean, just based on what's said about him and kind of just how things look statistically for him, just a small sample size, it sounds like maybe that he's a player in the mold of like a Jimmy Butler. But I haven't watched him, so that's just based on kind of what I hear.
I don't know if his defense is that good.
I've heard it's. I don't know either. I'm just going based off what I've heard, and maybe I'm misremembering what I heard. But I've heard that that he's a really good defensive player. So obviously I'm gonna have to watch him and make up my own opinion. It's just I didn't feel like watching a freaking G League game this year. That's the thing. But he's just another one of those guys that we could add to the conversation, maybe because his measurements sound good.
Yeah,
6'7" with a 6'11" wingspan. That's intriguing for a guy that can pass the ball. So.
Yep, and then well, I just want to address the Don's trade scenario he keeps posting.
What's the trade scenario?
What do you think of this scenario? Draft Jabari or Chet? Well,
Okay.
First of all, okay, yes, great. We'd have to move up to 1 or 2 to get either of those guys. So I would love if that happened. Sure, if we got to 1 or 2, great. But if not, we obviously don't have a chance of getting those guys if we don't move up. So that's purely dependent on whether we move up to 1 or 2 or not. So that part of it is fine. But then trade Nola pick for Grant. I mean, fine if you want to trade in. I'd rather have any number of players in this draft that would be available around 11 or 12 than trade that pick for Grant, but that's just me. And then also Bledsoe and 2 second-rounders for Isaac, or I think he meant Christian Wood, not Grant again. But yeah, neither of those teams are accepting Bledsoe, who's a negative value, and it would have to be a guaranteed contract if we traded him in that scenario. And then also, like, second-rounders aren't going to be appealing to rebuilding teams for trading players like that. They could probably get more than that, so I doubt either team would do that.
Yep, I don't really want Jonathan Isaac because I don't know. It sounds like guys wouldn't respect him in the locker room. Sounds
well,
like
not only that, but I mean, he's missed 2 years
and he can't get on the court.
Like,
yeah,
and that was after being like injured most of his first few years. So.
Yeah, so he's iffy. Christian Wood just seems to be about his own stats. I don't know. He's kind of suspect. He's one of those guys, like, he went undrafted, and it was due to like some character issues or something with him coming to the league, if I recall correctly. I don't know exactly what they were, but he was like a projected late first round pick out of UNLV, and then went undrafted. I remember being surprised on draft night, and then he's developed into a really good player, but it almost seems like he's one of those guys where it's like, I need to prove that I am the best. And he has that chip on his shoulder, but like from an individual standpoint where like he wants to put up numbers and he like wants to be the guy and wants to prove, like he's kind of one of those guys that feels slighted, or that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten from him. And then he Christian Wood at the 4 is not as good as Christian Wood at the 5. I do not want Christian Wood at the 4. I don't think he's a good defensive player at the 4. I think he's a solid defensive player at the 5. I've gotten into arguments with people that have overrated his defense. And you're going to have to give up like the Pelicans pick for Wood. We could get Wood maybe for the Pelicans pick, but we're not going to be able to trade seconds for him.
And here's the problem. Or not really problem, but why do we want Jeremy Grant and Christian Wood if we're getting Jabari or Chet?
Yeah.
Like,
so what's our starting lineup? Christian Wood at the 3 and Jeremy Grant at the 2?
Like, wouldn't you rather just give, 30 plus minutes to whatever player we got in 1 or 2 in that scenario?
Yeah. I mean, we don't, and that's the thing, we don't need both. If we draft Chet or Jabari, we don't need both Christian Wood and Jeremy Grant. Because we have 4 of our, yeah, we have 4 of our 5 starters. Christian Wood makes no sense if you have Chet or Jabari, because Chet or Jabari would be the starting 4 next year. Okay, right. Next to Nurkic. You just need the starting 3, because you'd have Damon Ant as your starting point guard and shooting guard. You have Jabari or Chet is your starting power forward. Nurkic is your starting center once we brought him back. I had a dream, by the way, that we brought Nurkic back for 2 years, like $13.5 million per year. It was like 13 to 14 million per year. I had a dream about that. So if that happens, I saw a vision. Anyway, you're just looking for your starting three in that situation.
My guess is 2 years, 32 million.
Okay. My 2 years, 27 mil for me. Anyway, we'll see who's right. Somebody remind us on the first day of free agency. But yeah, you're just looking for your starting three there. So if you can trade that Pelicans pick for like an OG Anunoby would be my dream. You do it. Jeremy Grant, I don't really like as a three, and I don't really like in general, so I wouldn't do that. Christian Wood can't play the three, so I wouldn't do that. Isaac can't even play. He can't even get on the freaking court, so I wouldn't do that. At that point, I just, take a chance on a high upside guy. Maybe a Tari Eason is there, or maybe a Jalen Duren is there to put behind Nurkic for a couple years, develop him to be our future center. Agbaji could be a starting three next year if he measures adequately for the small forward position. He's a guy who's very NBA ready. So that's my thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Chris S. says if he was going to sign for less than 14.4, he would have already signed that deal. Are you talking about Nurkic?
That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess we'll answer that every single show when you ask it, Alex.
Has he really been asking it every show?
He asks every show along with some other people. But, I mean, some people aren't here, but I know Alex has been here listening to every time.
I mean, I still need to do research on prospects, guys. Like, honestly, this is the most I've paid attention to draft prospects at this point in March, maybe ever. But it hasn't... Given the fact that the Blazers have 2 lottery picks, a lot of my attention has been focused towards watching Arizona, watching Auburn, watching Gonzaga. Now, obviously, the college season is done, but that's usually what I wait for before I get into, like, international prospects. Because I don't even know how to watch Hugo Besson play or Ousmane Dieng play. Both those guys are from New Zealand. New Zealand has a couple draft prospects this year, good for them. But,
Play on the same team.
Do they play on the same team?
Yeah, the Breakers.
Oh, they both play in the NBL. Yeah, so
yeah.
I'll watch some various clips on those guys, some scouting breakdowns on those guys, and kind of come up with some opinions on players once I actually see them. But like, I've never watched Hugo Besson play. I've never watched Ousmane Dieng play. I haven't really focused on like Max Christie or Keon Ellis or guys like that. I haven't really keyed in on them. So I am not going to... I don't know. There's a couple guys that I like that I've seen in the second round. Like, I like David Roddy. If Christian Koloko falls to 36, which is where our second round pick is now, since we moved up to 6, our second round pick also moves up from 37 to 36. If Koloko falls to there, you take him and you run. That's a home run. You're thrilled if you can get that. But number of guys that I don't know much about, so it's hard to even answer that question.
Yeah, and the other problem is, like, throughout the draft process, a lot of this is going to change. So right now you look at all these mock drafts or draft boards, and there's, like, several guys, for example, like a Jalen Williams, right, from Arkansas, who is probably going to be a third or fourth rotation power forward / center on a good team next year, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if we're trying to contend, like, that's a guy who could possibly make our rotation and might be a good fit next to a guy like Watford, even if you're talking about, like, long-term or whatever. But
you say Arkansas, honestly, and I get triggered.
Sorry.
Anyway, go on.
Dro's using it to...
Is Dro in here and asking for a 5-minute ban?
No, he just said hogs. That's not
to me, that's asking for I'm just going to remove it. I'll give him a warning.
But I'm just saying, like, a guy like that, so he's projecting a lot of things to go, mid to late second round. but he's the type of guy who throughout the process could sneak up into the first round, so he might not even be available. So like we could talk about guys like that all day, but it's hard to know this far away from the draft without having the combine, without having individual workouts to try to see who's like impressing. They'll also have a point where this happens every year where someone stops working out for certain teams, and there's rumors about a certain like promise they made, like Duarte last year. Stuff like that. So there's just so many players. But the other thing we have to focus on or worry about is if we do keep the Pelicans pick, we're going to be drafting 2 lottery picks. Now, if we trade it, it kind of ruins what I'm about to say. But if we keep both picks, then it becomes our second rounders might be more just shoot for the fences and go for just like crazy upside, like the Anthony Simons version of whatever second rounders are out there. And that's usually in the second round would be international guys. So maybe someone you just stash. And that's why I always come back to Ibubaji, who just has insane length and athleticism, that you can maybe get something and hit a home run out of a second round pick. And so like, I think if we keep both lottery picks, our second round picks, we might even trade them or whatever. But if we keep all of our picks, we're probably just going to shoot for an international player that might not even play on Portland next year.
Yep. Another name that I'll toss out, Orlando Robinson, is intriguing to me just because he's so skilled for a 6'11 big. We're gonna need to see if he's like a true 6'11 or not. Because if he's like 6'9.5, then he's not impressive.
I mean, he looks big when he plays.
Yeah, the knock on him is he can't play defense, but he seems agile enough. He seems like to have decent foot speed at least offensively. So I haven't watched Fresno State. That's where Orlando Robinson played. So gonna have to figure out where his struggles are and if there's something I feel like Chauncey could help him fix. But he's a guy who averaged 19 points per game, 8 rebounds, and almost 3 assists, can knock down threes, can pass, can handle the ball at 6'11" is what his listed height is. Or 7 foot is actually what his listed height is.
So I actually watched a couple of Fresno State games late in the season, and he kind of reminds me of a poor man's DeMarcus Cousins.
Does he?
So he's not as good, obviously, but he kind of moves like him. He's kind of like how Cousins looks like a little too big to move as quick as he does, So he's got like kind of like sneaky quick athleticism despite being really big, and then has the weight to lean on people and make it tough to get around him. So that's an intriguing guy. Yeah, his defense it's okay. It's kind of hard to tell because there's not a lot of good big men in that league, or in that conference. I mean, but I mean that's the kind of guy you'd look at. We might even be able to get him with our late second too, because depending on how it goes. But that's why it's so hard to know draft ranges right now.
See, like that's the type of guy that would be intriguing long term if he can pan out next to Watford off the bench. Like I feel like he would be a good fit with Watford.
Right. And here's the other thing. I really want a developmental center. Yeah. Like just a super big guy who it doesn't have to be a certain skill set, but there was a lot of talk lately about keeping the Eubanks, which is totally fine in my opinion, but I want like one other center that has a chance to push him for the second or the backup thing. So like if Orlando Robinson can come in and push Eubanks and maybe steal that spot from him and we have Eubanks as our third string center, that's fine. If it's one of our higher picks, like we end up getting Koloko, or somehow we trade into the mid-teens and get Mark Williams, or even if we drafted Duren in the lottery. So like obviously those kind of guys I would expect to win the second string center over Drew Eubanks. But I don't want to go into next season with Drew Eubanks being like, okay, we found our second string center, like this is it. And it's the same thing I said about Trent and Watford earlier in the year. It's like if we bring in a backup power forward and Trent and Watford beats that player out, that's a good thing in my opinion because he played well enough to earn that role, right? Whereas if we're just like, okay, right now we just need a starting power forward and a starting small forward, right? Because and we don't need a backup center because we're going to re-sign Nurk. We have Drew Eubanks now. Our backup power forward set because we have Trendon. Like that's not the mindset I want to approach this offseason. I want to try to get better at every position, and while still giving those guys a chance to earn minutes if they're on the team.
Yep, agreed. More questions. Send us all your questions. This is what we're gonna do for the rest of the stream, and for pretty much every post-game show. What's up?
Mike Posner said he's confused about our future second-round picks. How many do we have this year and next year? So this year we have our own second rounder, which is rare, and that's currently picked 36th. And we also have Memphis's second rounder, which we got in the Utah Jazz Spurs a three-way trade that involved Ingles and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all that kind of stuff. So we have those two picks, and that right now is currently second to last, but it moves up 2 spots because 2 teams ahead of them have forfeited their second-round picks this year. So it's not the greatest pick, but it's like 57 right now or something. And then we also picked up, I believe, 3 other second-rounders, or was it 4 other second-rounders, something like that, in the other trades. So we have a few. I think it's 3. We got the 2025 Detroit one, and then we got a two-way futures seconds in the New Orleans trade as well.
You can Google that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. People will ask that, but just
That's just
go
off the
on
top
Google.
of my head. But
yeah. Because I don't remember all our seconds, but just future second round picks NBA. Just Google that and then go and click on I usually just click on NBA future drafts detailed from Real GM.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just go through because it has details on, I don't know, it's just a good layout. So you can see what the protections are and what trade it was from and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I would recommend.
We actually still have our 2026 and 2027. Well, kind of. Because our 2026
they back up the protections on.
Well,
yeah.
No, the 2026 is we get either our pick back or New Orleans or something, whichever is better. So it's like we have our pick unless New Orleans pick is more favorable than us, so we get that instead. And then we also picked up a 2027 from New Orleans, that 2025 from Detroit. We have a.
I just say let him Google it. Yeah, we could. Yeah, it's very complicated. Imagine if we were OKC fans being asked that question, Eric. You could talk about what picks we had for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Half Daddy asked, will Brandon Williams be a bench player for another NBA team next year? No, he will not be a bench player for another NBA team next year. He will be a bench player for your Portland Trailblazers next year because he signed a 2-year, 2-way contract. Now, we could get out of that, I guess, with no real harm done, but I fully expect after the way he's played so far this year to be kept on as one of our 2-ways next year since we already signed him to that.
Here's an interesting question, the conversation that we haven't had. If the Heat flame out in the first round and Butler is made available, would you trade both picks? Dame/Ant/Butler/Nurk would be the core.
My question is, how are we getting Butler and his $40-some million contract?
Be Bledsoe, Hart, plus probably sign the picks. Or sign at least one of the picks. Well, I mean, you could sign both because you'd have to wait anyway. 30 days, but...
I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what pick we get.
I mean, 6th is what? $6 million? So Hart is what? Almost $13 million next year? Or is it a flat $12 million? I forget.
I think it's a flat 12.
So I think it goes up and then it goes down the final year or something weird. But 12 plus 19.5, that's 31.5. And then it's if it's $6 million, for
Uh,
the sixth pick, or like $5 million or so. That's enough to get you there, right?
have you seen Jimmy Butler's contract?
Is it? I mean, it can't be more than like $45 million next year, can it? Let me look at this spot check.
No, not next year, but it's 50 million at the end of it, and he's already kind of showing signs of.
Oh, you're talking about his extension. Oh, like we could match salary. We'd have to trade Hart. We'd have to trade Hart and Bledsoe, and then obviously the picks. We could match salary, but you're looking at in 2025, 2026, you want to pay that dude $52 million when he's already looking like he's declining a little bit. I wouldn't feel good about that because I don't know, man. I have a tough time with that. I would I would rather have Siakam than Jimmy Butler. Is that a hot take, or is that...
I don't think it's a hot take. Butler's tough because if you're winning, things are great. The minute you don't win, though, or something goes wrong, is a problem. I mean, it would be worth it. It's just I don't understand how people think we're gonna get there. I mean, yeah, give up lottery picks and 2 contracts. I mean, I don't even know if the Heat do that. If we got like 7 and 12 and Bledsoe and Hart, do the Heat do that? I don't know.
Bledsoe 7 and 12. I mean, if they're desperate, yeah. But here's the thing with Jimmy Butler: he's a really talented player. His defense would be helpful. Him possibly be him. He's what? Let me see his age. He's 32 years old, closer to 33. If he's starting to decline, and then you add that with his ridiculous contract extension that's going to be looked at as one of the worst contracts in the league by the end of it, in my opinion. And then you look at, all the issues with every stop he's been, and apparently, I don't know, like it sounded like he wanted to fight Eric Spoelstra in the huddle because Eric Spoelstra said, "What, you want to fight me?" Like, he's had issues everywhere he's gone. And then you combine that with, I don't know, he's one of those guys where, like, if he's the first option, he might be good enough as your best player to win you a championship if you have the right pieces around him. The Heat obviously made the finals in the bubble. The Heat have been good this year. They have Kyle Lowry. They have, like, really good complementary pieces and a good system, good culture, good coach, right? So obviously it'd take all the right ingredients around him, but he is probably good enough right now to be the best player on a championship team. It's just, like, if we brought him in, it's like, how are we going to use him with Dame and Ant, I don't know. Because I don't like him as, like, a number 3 guy in terms of a scorer or a number 2 guy. I don't like him playing off the ball compared to having the ball in his hands, but it's like you have Dame and Ant. So the fit would be a little bit questionable for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shervin's right. It does open up a window where we'd probably... I mean, he's one of the players that could make us a contender if it worked out. So, I don't know. If it's on the table, I guess you have to. But in my opinion, I think a lot of these trade scenarios for max contract players are going to come down to whether or not you want to trade Ant for that player, because I think that's teams are going to want Ant over like the 7th and 12th pick, in my opinion.
Very possible. Depends. I mean, it depends on how many players are available. It depends on what the markets are like. A number of things come into play here, but I would rather have Siakam. That is my still, and it has been for a while, Eric. That is still my dream target for the Portland Trail Blazers. The thing is with like Ant for Butler, like here's the thing: if you trade Ant for Butler and then if the Blazers pick also moves up, obviously the Blazers pick would move up first and the draft is first because it'd have to be a sign and trade of Ant wherever he's going after the draft. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're talking about the Blazers pick moving up and what you could trade for that, and then maybe you could trade Ant for another star, you could potentially get 2 legitimate stars next to Dame, and that would be intriguing.
Or a pick could be a star.
Yeah. It's just like, what 2 guys can you get?
Yeah.
If you're talking about, like, you can get Jaylen Brown and Jimmy Butler, I mean, that's intriguing. You have to consider it just because of the talent. It's just people underrate fit, Eric. Like, and I know you know this, but people underrate fit. When you look at Phoenix, it's not that they have like 3 legitimate superstars or anything like that. Right? It's you got Chris Paul, you got Devin Booker, you got DeAndre Ayton, but they're the best team in the league. Why are they the best team in the league? It's because all their pieces fit beautifully together, play really well together, play really well off of each other, and they have role players that play their role extremely well. And that's why they're the best team in the league. So for a lot of people, it's just like, oh, you just got to get Dame the most talent. So, yeah, you'd trade for Jimmy Butler, and yeah, you'd trade for Jaylen Brown, and yeah, you'd trade for Julius Randle. You know what I mean? It's just like big names. It's like, oh, you just got to get Dame big names and talent. But it doesn't equate to that. I mean, look at the Lakers. They brought in Russell Westbrook. Big name, star before the season. How has that worked out? I said from the get-go with that trade that trade was not a good trade, and it was a terrible fit. And look at where the Lakers are now. They might miss the freaking play-in. Okay? So, Shervin says, come on, why are we overthinking it? We're not overthinking it. People underthink it in regards to just bringing in names, assuming they're going to work because they're a big name and they have talent. Cohesion matters. Fit matters. The Suns have proven that. That's the reason they're the number 1 team in the league right now.
And who mentioned the Suns?
Damian Lillard mentioned the Suns.
Wanting to build the Suns way, right?
Yep.
He didn't say, oh, let's build a title the way the Lakers did it 2 years ago, right?
Yeah. Because you're never going to build a Lakers team in Portland. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe if you get lucky via trade. But that's the thing. It's like, I'm down for trading for big names so long as they fit together, so long as the team is cohesive. Because if you get big names and the team isn't cohesive, it doesn't matter how much name power you have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can win. Like, it seems like it's trended a little bit away from just being able to win based off just a couple good individual players. Like, the Bucks won last year. All their pieces fit extremely well around Giannis. Even down to Brook Lopez, who's kind of a 3-and-D center. Can space the floor for Giannis and helps protect the rim, right? So, yeah, you need star power, but it's very important, and people undersell the importance of just having guys around them that fit. Talented players, but that's kind of where I'd struggle with, like, I'd still be very open to Jimmy Butler, but that's the fit isn't flawless, is what I would say for that. The fit isn't flawless. It's like you have all the playmaking you need. Nurkic can pass the ball. Dame and Ant, in terms of a backcourt, is a top 2 playmaking backcourt next year, probably. I don't know who you'd put above them. But in terms of just making plays for others, they're up there. So do you need Jimmy Butler, the playmaker? Is that really going to help you out that much offensively? And then you consider how he can't shoot threes and can't space the floor off the ball. It's not a flawless fit.
Yeah. I challenge people to stop throwing out all these star players. Like I see Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, LeBron. Please explain, instead of just saying, what do you think about getting this guy? Try to say, this is how I think we can get this guy. Because I want to see what you think we can do to get that player. Like Shervin saying, Dame and Ant next to Jimmy Butler would be great. How are you getting Jimmy Butler without giving up Ant in that scenario? Like, I don't see many scenarios where we get one of those players without doing it. And I know the person who mentioned Donovan Mitchell said Ant and a first for Mitchell. I mean, who knows if that's going to be on the table or not, but yeah, it's just I don't see many of those type of trades working out for us, even if some of these teams are in a fire sale situation. And Draymond Green, honestly, like I would like Draymond Green on this team, um, especially with how much Dame likes him and stuff. But like you have to think of it this way: what the heck would Golden State want from us? Because they've had 3 lottery picks the last 2 years, right? They probably aren't going to want to trade Draymond and for another couple lottery picks or a lottery pick, one of the two, right? And then have like even more young players that might not necessarily be good enough yet to help Steph and Clay still. So like the only scenario where they trade Draymond to us is if they go full rebuild, and I just don't see that happening. So I don't really see them breaking up the Clay, Draymond, Steph trio yet. And I just don't understand what they're not going to take Bledsoe in a first round pick or whatever, and Nas, like that doesn't help them contend. Like they want a win now player if they're doing that, someone just as good if not better than Draymond in that scenario.
Yep, absolutely agree. That's my whole argument for Siakam is like, I don't think it's likely, but hopefully, maybe Toronto decides, you know what, we're going to play OG at the 3 and Scotty Barnes at the 4. Because neither one of those guys are shooting guards to me. I think OG's better at small forward. Scotty Barnes, I don't think is a center. Sure, they can play out of position and probably be fine, but I'm kind of wondering, you know, especially if Toronto struggles in the playoffs this year, maybe it's a situation where you don't have 3 forwards. Shervin, on the other hand, don't quit giving me surface level freaking arguments, man. Am I okay to go on a little rant here, Eric?
Well, yeah, before you start the rant, though, again, Shervin, how are we getting a Hall of Fame two-way wing to help this team while keeping all our good players? Like, please explain what we're giving up for it.
Who cares about future Hall of Fame? What the hell is that doing?
Carmelo's a future Hall of Fame.
What the hell is that doing for the Lakers this year? They have how many future Hall of Famers, Eric? They have hella future Hall of Famers. I don't know how many. Dwight Howard, Russell Westbrook. Bruh, that's the thing. That's the same type of argument, Shervin, that Lakers fans used for Russell Westbrook. And I'm not saying that Jimmy Butler is Russell Westbrook, but I'm saying when that's your argument, when in the past that argument has proven to not be fully valid for other players, you gotta come with some better substance. Because that's the exact argument that was used for Russell Westbrook and the Los Angeles Lakers last year. Why wouldn't you want a future Hall of Famer triple-double machine to help out this team? We need a playmaking point guard. Russell Westbrook is a great pickup. How's that worked out, man? Future Hall of Famer. Recent All-NBA guy. You gotta argue better substance than that, because I just got through saying how it's not all about talent, how the talent has to fit, okay? And I know this is coming off like I don't want Jimmy Butler, but that's not the case. My whole argument is the fit is questionable, okay? So if I'm sitting here talking about cohesiveness and fit and how it would function on the court, you cannot come with a rebuttal that's based on he's a future Hall of Famer, two-way wing, he's so good, he'd be the best wing ever. Like, I know he's freaking good. I'm not talking about how good he is. I'm talking about his fit next to Damon Ants. I think it would be a bit questionable as to it being as good of a possible product on the floor in terms of winning actual basketball games. Because, I just made the whole argument, and it's like it went through one ear and out the other. So I'm not talking about how good Jimmy Butler is. You look at the Suns, they have they got 2 stars. I wouldn't say either guy right now is a superstar, right? But they got Chris Paul, they got Devin Booker. They got no other stars. They're the best team in the league. It's not just about acquiring big names. It's not just about, add this guy, he's good, so it's just going to work. Okay, so don't come with that type of argument. You're better than that. And it just gets frustrating when it's like I talk about fit and cohesiveness and whatnot, and then people say, oh, well, get this player because he's good. No, it's deeper than that. It's not overthinking it, because we've literally seen it play out in the last year with the Lakers. How it's not just about adding talent. Anyway, my rant's done.
Well, Dro, Jimmy cannot score at all three levels. He is not a three-point shooter, but I get your point other than that. But he can score at two levels, not three. Don't try to make him into something he's not. Caden, we talked about that at length earlier in the show. And then we have a Shelvin, not Sherwin, not Sherwin, Shelvin. Could get confusing here.
Yeah.
Jimmy, the best player for one of the best teams in the league, efficient, competitive two-way wing.
He's not efficient.
DeRozan can't shoot, but fit next to Levine. And that's actually a really good point. That DeRozan's actually been a pretty good fit on that team when a lot of people are questioning what they were doing. Now, their season's kind of gotten derailed, mostly because of injuries and stuff, but mostly because they can't beat a good team either. But that is a good example of a team that went for it with a questionable fit, and it worked out, like, kind of.
The thing is, he's been able to knock down threes this year, though he's shooting 35%. He doesn't shoot a ton of them, but they also needed an alpha. They also needed a guy.
Mm-hmm.
They also needed a number one.
Yeah. Well, I just want Shervin to stop saying anyone but Ant and give me a realistic trade scenario that Miami's accepting without trading Ant or Dame. That's all I'm asking for, and that's what we expect from people like Shervin, who's participated in a mock-off season and stuff like that. Like,
yep.
come up with a scenario that you would be comfortable trading for Jimmy Butler and that Miami would accept.
I'm getting annoyed right now, man. It might be time to end the stream soon because people just ignore any context that I ever freaking say. Like, got a comment in chat. Your argument for getting Siakam isn't good either. He isn't a realistic target with how good he's looked. Legitimately all NBA caliber, and Toronto has looked good this year. I literally said I don't think it's likely they trade him, but I'm hoping for them just deciding to go a little bit younger and wanting to keep OG and Scotty Barnes. Right now they got OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam. I think those three are forwards. I don't think any of them should be a starting center. I don't think any of them should be a starting shooting guard, right? And I know the NBA is going positionless, but I think it would be best for them to trade either OG or Siakam because Scotty Barnes is a rookie, and I feel like they need to go a little bit younger. They still have a good team, but it's a situation where, and this is I'd be okay with OG Anunoby too. So if they want to keep Siakam and maybe play Scotty Barnes, a big small forward, maybe OG Anunoby's available. But I legitimately said I don't think it's likely that happens. And it seems like people just don't hear that when I say that.
Yeah, I mean, every single one of these players we've talked about the last 20 minutes is not realistic. So Jimmy Butler's not realistic. LeBron's not realistic. None of these guys.
What if they view Scotty Barnes as a point center? They probably do. I literally just mentioned how they view things positionlessly. But that's the thing. It's like I'm making like it's like dude, I could say, "Oh, it's very very unlikely," but I'm hoping that maybe they think this, and people are like, "Well, you know what? They think something else, or they probably think something else." I'm literally saying that it's not likely, and I'm literally just saying what I'm hoping for, right? Like nobody thought Dallas was going to trade Porzingis for frickin' Spencer Dinwiddie, but somehow they come across some certain thought process where that's what they wanted to do. Okay, so saying I'm sitting here hoping for something and that's my pipe dream, which is what I called Siakam earlier this year, doesn't mean I think it's going to happen. Like, I try and provide context with everything that I say, just so that people can't come up with like arguments that I already agree with or that I already know. Like I try and provide a lot of context with what I say, and people just ignore it, and it gets frustrating, man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and I mean, Toronto could decide also that they're comfortable with one of those three coming off the bench and keeping all of them. Like they don't have to make a move, but that's obviously you. Like started off by saying if one of those three became available, just like if Miami imploded, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it's going to take. If the Utah Jazz implode and lose in the first round again, like, are they going to have a fire sale? Yes, it's possible, I guess, but like, it's
Yeah.
tough. Yeah.
See, and I mean, that's what Toronto is based on. It's also based on, maybe positionally, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep all three guys. So that's why I'm a little bit more. I still don't think it's going to happen. I will say that a million times. I still don't think that it's a situation where they trade any one of the three guys, but I would have a little bit more hope for a team like Toronto maybe trading OG or Pascal Siakam because they have three legitimate core forwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the NBA is going positionless, but you want a legitimate big man. You don't want any three of those guys guarding Jokic or guarding Embiid, who you're going to have to go through in the East. And I feel like, I don't know. I don't think OG should be playing the two either.
Well,
and they have Gary Trent and they have Fred VanVleet.
mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, but then they trade a first for Thad Young at the deadline too. Like, I don't know. Who's another one of those type that's like a 4? He's not really a 5. So, yeah, I don't know. I could, if there's a team that I could see keeping Siakam at center, I guess that a little bit depends on how they finish the season. But I want to say they're like over the last 40 games, like 28-12 or something like that. They've been pretty good.
Yep.
The second half of the season.
But that's the thing. When it comes to trade prospects, I don't just say, oh, well, maybe it implodes there and we can get him. Like, I always try and figure out, okay, what would the other team want? So when it comes to, like, Jaylen Brown, okay, it's a situation where if it doesn't work in the playoffs, I could maybe see Boston thinking, okay, we need, like, an elite guard, an elite guy to initiate the offense. We already have Jason Tatum at the forward position. I could see them thinking that maybe an Anthony Simons would be a better fit. Okay, so Jaylen Brown, if things don't go well, Jaylen Brown might be gettable, but it's because they're going to want a like legitimate guard with star potential or who's already a star. So if the Blazers get the 4th pick, maybe they'd want Jaden Ivey. I still don't think that's enough for a guy like Jaylen Brown, who's really well established in this league. And then, if not, maybe they would be interested in Anthony Simons plus another asset for Jaylen Brown. I don't think we could get Jaylen Brown with just Anthony Simons, but supposedly they want... I've heard in the past that they've wanted like a lead guard, and they haven't been able to find that. I mean, they traded a first for Derek White this past offseason, so that should go to show you. And Derek White isn't a lead guard, so...
And a pick swap.
And a pick swap, yeah. So I still don't think Jaylen Brown is likely, right? This is all speculation, but I always try and... If I'm going to talk about a player, it's like, okay, maybe we might be able to get him. Unlikely, but maybe. I always go on more than just, oh, maybe it implodes, or hopefully it implodes. You always have to figure out, what does the other team want? And that's what Cronin has to figure out. That's the art of negotiating trades. You got to give up something that the other team wants. Or you have to take on something that the other team doesn't want if they have a bad contract. So, I mean, here's the thing. Like, Celtics have been playing phenomenal, so I'm not counting on anything like that happening. They look they look ready to go. They look like a team that could make it to the finals. So
they look like a team that even if they lose at this point, they're going to look at their success this season and how well Ime did turning the team around and try to add to it. And they can always blame the Robert Williams injury now if they fall out of the first round. So I look for them to add to that group or try to find a lead guard without getting rid of one of those guys instead of the opposite way. And
I mean, for the Blazers, it's like if every situation is unlikely, but there's enough potential targets out there, then you have more of a chance of maybe one becoming available that you can make a play for. Yeah. So one name that we haven't mentioned, which is extremely unlikely, but I don't think you can 1,000% rule it out at this point, given how things have gone. Do you know what name I'm going to say?
LeBron?
Yes. But I don't know. Like, don't count on even coming close to LeBron ending up in Portland, but given how I could see him wanting out of LA this summer. He moved there for like lifestyle reasons, and it was more than just basketball. But given how terribly things have gone, and apparently there's tension with LeBron and ownership or whatever, maybe he's gettable. But he also has a no trade clause, correct?
No, I don't think you can, because in basketball, I think the only way to get a no trade clause is if you're with a team for a really long time and have there's a certain clause. It's kind of like a supermax contract. Like you have to be with your team for a certain length of time. So I don't think he qualified for a no trade clause.
Yeah.
Since he moved from Cleveland to LA a few years ago.
Yeah. So LeBron couldn't necessarily just control where he goes. So it could be the first time in his career where LeBron isn't controlling his destination, which would be extremely intriguing if the Lakers decide, you know what, well, we have you, AD, and Westbrook, and it's not even good enough to make the playoffs, so we're just going to restart. Especially if LeBron is just like, I don't really want to be here anymore.
Well, I kind of see the Lakers situation as the same that we talked about with the Warriors, because they owe so many future picks and stuff. I just don't see them rebuilding or going that route. So I don't really know.
They're already like losing their lottery.
No,
picks,
I know, but
so what? Keep kicking, treading water, not being anything close to a contender for 3 years, or just start the process now? Because either way, you're talking about like not having your picks that are in the lottery. You know what I'm saying? Like if they were a 6, 7 seed, I'd say I don't expect that to have any chance of happening. But given just how bad they've been this year, and the fact that they have no assets at all to trade, like they can't just fix this roster. They're not going to get anything back for Russell Westbrook, and it's obvious that he doesn't belong on that team. Like he doesn't fit with that team. What do? They are screwed. Okay, they are absolutely screwed. So, what would you do if you were them, Eric? I'm curious. Because you're creative, but they are stuck between a rock and a hard place, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I wouldn't have given up Westbrook. I would have gotten Westbrook.
Well, let's say they fire Pelinka and they hire you.
Yeah.
I know that would be stressful as hell, but let's say it happens.
I'm calling every team and seeing if there was one team that I would take any contracts as long as I didn't have to give up a future first for Westbrook. I would make any trade, I think, in that scenario. So I'd first see if that was an option.
Westbrook for Dinwiddie and Bertans.
Yeah, like that type of trade. Yeah, like I'm trying to think of a team, because like obviously a rebuilding team probably wouldn't want Westbrook. Trying to think of a team off the top of my head that would take a chance on him. Yeah, I don't think Dallas would, but then he's a horrible fit with Luka.
Yeah, but like hypothetically, that type of package, I would think.
This is gonna sound really weird, but like a team like the Nuggets, like if they get frustrated with some of the big contracts they signed and did that, I guess the Clippers could always do it, but
you should be the Lakers in our mock-off season.
Thomas Ransky mentions the Knicks. I think they're a team that might be dumb enough to do that.
For like Randall and bring Randall back to
like not
Lakers.
Even Randall, like he mentions Fournier, Burks, and Noel. Like I would do that. Just try to get.
Okay, and then what? What would be the move after that?
Then I just do a better job of signing players. You'd have, the MLE and try to I would basically trade because no team has ever really done this with LeBron, but I would do what we've been suggesting that Dame does and try more of a younger team with LeBron. Because I don't think signing all these like aging veterans is the right move. So I would go for more like Austin Reeves type players in this draft and get some role players maybe that can help now. Like get like a Keon Ellis or like some 3-and-D type players in the draft so you can fill out some of your roster with that. And then just I mean you're the Lakers, so you can get free agents to sign there for cheap. I mean we saw them do it with like 10 players last year. So I would do that as well. And then just take a chance on some like players that other teams don't want.
I feel like it's going to be harder for them to just get any free agents this offseason, given how badly this season is
it's the Lakers. They can always get free agents.
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be as easy as last offseason. But, I mean, still, I don't think that team is making it out of the first round. I still think that team is first round at best. I mean, you can never count out LeBron, obviously, and AD if he's healthy, which is a big if. I mean, top 2 guys to have, that's possible. I don't know. Are you going to win another championship with that group? I really, really do not think so.
Well, much like with Dame, I think if LeBron still wants to be there, you have to try. But I'm telling him I'm done giving up future first because he's 37 or whatever.
Well, you also don't have any future first.
Well, I mean, once the draft happens, I think they could possibly still trade 2 future firsts, so which would be a disaster. But yeah.
I hope LeBron wants out. I mean, honestly, see that could be a situation where they just bite the bullet and just say, okay, well, we don't have any future picks, but if we can get a couple good picks back for LeBron, a couple good picks back for AD, get some cap space in a couple years, and use that to take on maybe a bad contract, get picks, we can make up for the picks and start a rebuild.
Stop it. You can't trade picks in consecutive drafts, so they can't trade both of them, but they could trade their 2029 after the draft this year.
Yep.
Those become tradable.
Yep. So it's a situation where, I mean, I don't think it's likely that they go that route, but it's possible that they just bite the bullet and say, we're not going to be good enough. And we don't have the assets to really make anything happen. Because I think, trading Westbrook is great and all. I don't know if there's any team that wants him, even to just, I think it's a situation where they might have a tough time offloading him, even if they don't want anything back, and they don't have assets to attach to him.
Yeah.
There might not be a trade out there that another team would take for Russell Westbrook. That's possible.
You put me in charge as the GM, right?
This is a good plan.
I'm not I don't think I'd rather I hear what you're saying. It's probably a long shot to win a title still with LeBron and AD, unless for some reason they were 100% healthy in the playoffs and they had the perfect roster around them. But I think once again, much like what we talked about with Dame, I think with their lack of assets they have available the next few years, I know I would get stuff for those guys if I traded them, but I just don't like being in a situation where I'm trading off pieces for a rebuilding team when I'm already starting at a point where I don't have any of my picks the next 4 years or whatever, and all of them are pick swaps and stuff like that,
Yeah, but I mean, look at what Brooklyn did, because Brooklyn obviously didn't have their future picks. They traded them all to Boston unprotected. It was really stupid. They were still able, with they needed some shrewd moves and some of the right moves. They were still able to build a team that ended up making the playoffs with D'Angelo Russell and I forget who else was on that team, but the D'Angelo Russell team.
But that team wasn't going to win a title.
Yeah, but then it was they got good enough where then all of a sudden KD and Kyrie signed there. And then, Harden wants to go play with KD and Kyrie. And then they have their big three. Now, obviously, the Harden thing didn't work out, but they still got KD and Kyrie. So I think it's a situation where it's like, if you're able, they would have a chance of, especially if they were able to kind of clear the books and get back the right assets for LeBron and AD, they could build a team that would be competitive enough for them to just say, okay, now we can go after and maybe sign 2 star free agents, and then we're contenders again.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the one place that you could make that argument that that plan would be not foolish. Because if I'm anywhere else, I'm not banking on Durant or KD signing there. So yeah, I guess I see your point there. I don't like Houston, for example. They trade Harden and get some sort of compensation back. Mm-hmm. And actually, the Brooklyn pick might turn out way better than it was supposed to be this year. But in my opinion, that trying to, like, it might have been, well, I mean, Harden asked out, so it wasn't possible. But, like, trying to still win in that situation is better than just completely tearing it up, as fun as that would be as the GM. Because it would just make me mad watching us, like the Clippers this year, right? Like, let's say the Clippers last summer, Kawhi was a free agent, and they end up losing Kawhi. Let's say he signed somewhere else, and then they'd end up trading PG or whatever, and they didn't make the playoffs, but they already knew their pick was gone to the Thunder no matter what happened this season. That would just make me mad all year as a GM, knowing that I'm rebuilding and I don't even have my own pick.
Yeah. Basically, all I'm trying to say is there isn't, like, every path has positives and negatives. Every path is at least viable enough where you could say it's possible. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a situation where you could rule out them just kind of cleaning ship here because of how bad things are right now, and they don't really have a ton of assets to improve it, Mm-hmm. So that's the thing is, I wouldn't say it's likely, but that's the thing is I feel like one of the situations we've talked about, we've talked about like 5 star players so far, and if you look at any one guy, it's like, oh, it's unlikely that he plays for a different team next year. But when you talk about 5 guys, there's a chance that I feel like there's going to be one of them where something ends up playing out where they get moved. Yeah. So who knows which guy that is? I don't know which situation you think would be more likely, but I mean, LeBron, like if LeBron becomes available, here's the thing: if the Lakers take that route, AD becomes available too. So it's a situation where both those guys would obviously make sense for Portland. It would be fun to have LeBron in a Blazer uniform, but
yeah,
LeBron I could see wanting to play with Dame too. So maybe there's some sort of Nike connection that you could use to incentivize him to want to play here. Because obviously, if he doesn't want to play there, he might retire or something. I don't know.
From LeBron's point of view, though, if I'm LeBron, I don't think he'll have this mindset. But if he had the mindset of, man, if I won a title in Portland, got Dame a ring, got Portland a championship, and then you could say you won in Miami and LA, which, super teams or whatever, but then you also won a title in Cleveland and Portland, probably 2 of the probably bottom 5 hardest markets to win a title in, right? He could look at that as a challenge. Like, that would be like that would have been like Jordan winning a title when he went to Washington or something, you know? So, like, that might be his final. All you people like Eric Brandt, you dumbass who doesn't think I'm the GOAT, like, take this. I'm going to win a title with your favorite team. And karate chop his status as the greatest of all time. So, I don't know.
And maybe then Beavis would put him in his top 50.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if he'd choose Portland in that scenario, but if he had that mindset, it would be cool. Because I thought that was always the lame part about LeBron and the Lakers situation is, like, I mean, how cool would it have been if he chose the Clippers instead of the Lakers and he won a title for the Clippers or something, you know? And and he'd be living in the same spot, same arena, all that kind of stuff. But because honestly, it's not that impressive to win a title for the Lakers. And the next year you handpicked Anthony Davis because he's in clutch sports, and you get him out of there. So I've never been impressed with that title. His Cleveland title is one of the more impressive ones of all time because it was over the 73 win Warriors. So I give him credit for that one, but his other rings are kind of to me. And so I would be looking at a situation like that, but I also would have been looking at that when he left Cleveland the last time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so maybe, but yeah, I don't know. Something about LeBron when he went to LA, I just felt like he was gonna finish his career there. Maybe at the end go back to Cleveland, but
see, I think he planned on finishing his career there, but he planned on, I'm gonna go to the Lakers, and then in a year, I'll get a star, and we're gonna win, and we're just gonna be elite for the rest of my career. I think that's legitimately how he thought things were gonna go down. I don't think he thought that they were gonna be sitting here on March 30th, 2022, and they're sitting here hanging on to 10th place in the Western Conference in a season where he's played. Where I think he, circumstances might have changed given how the season's gone down.
Yeah.
Because he's had such stretches where he just does not seem interested in even playing.
Completely agree with that. But at the same time, I feel like LeBron has the mentality where, we just have to change our roster next year and we'll be fine.
That's what he thought last summer, though.
I know, but I think that's how he thinks. And I think he's going to blame Pelinka for not pulling the trigger on giving up a first round pick and Taylor Horton Tucker or whoever at the deadline. And that's another thing we need to talk about because their calculation on Taylor Horton Tucker really screwed them because if he apparently they could have gotten Kyle Lowry the year before and they refused. They had a deal in place and they refused because we could be talking about the Lakers having Kyle Lowry
and Buddy Hield.
And
would they have been able to get Buddy Hield if they give up Horton Tucker?
I don't know about that, but they could have been in a situation where they didn't have to give up all those guys. They probably re-signed Caruso instead of letting him walk. They don't have to give. I didn't think it was all those guys. But yeah, so they could have been in a situation where they had Lowry and they might have been better that year in the playoffs. And, who knows if certain people get hurt, if the circumstances are different. But I think they're much better off this year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a misstep. But, I mean, I don't know if LeBron looking into that and being pissed off with Pelinka is necessarily going to keep him in LA.
Yeah, I think if anything, he'll get Pelinka fired. Probably that's what'll come.
I mean, he'll get Pelinka fired. Then he'll start playing La GM, and then he'll be like, "Oh shoot! I mean, we have no picks. Our one young player has no value left because he's played enough to show teams that he's not who we said he was, which is Taylor Horton Tucker. We have no assets to give up. The only way." We still have Westbrook on the team. He's going to be maybe impossible to get rid of. And then if they have Westbrook on the team, they're in the luxury tax, right? So they're only talking about tax MLE and minimums. Mm. That's as bleak of a offseason outlook as any team. Whoever gets the Lakers in our mock offseason has a huge job on their hands. And honestly, I feel like whoever gets the Lakers will just blow it up. Because otherwise it's probably not going to be fun. And at this point, maybe we let them. I don't know. That's going to be something we'll have to figure out with the mock-off season.
I forgot they had Schroeder and his $16 million contract, who I believe was part of that. Thanks, Thomas Oransky. So they could have still had the assets to pull it off, a Hield trade in the offseason.
Yeah, they would have still had like Trez. Maybe they get a better start. They would
And
probably want a different starting center, or you play AD at center and you go find a. You still have Kuzma, right?
I
Or
think
did
I
the
think
Kings want
Kuzma
Okay,
was
yeah.
part of the Kings trade.
But I
Yeah.
mean, you're looking at like Lowry, Buddy Hield. That's a good fitting backcourt for LeBron and Anthony
Hmm.
Davis, and then fill in the fifth starter. I'd have a lot more faith in that going forward than this freaking mess where they have Westbrook who doesn't fit, doesn't help them at all, AD who can't stay healthy, LeBron who's still playing well, but then beyond that, you got all these mediocre role players who don't play good defense and or are too old.
Yeah. For for those that don't know, so the um, the Lakers had an agreement with the Kings, and they had a trade in place. It got as far as a player like Kyle Kuzma had already been notified that he was being shipped to Sacramento, and they were getting healed. And then Washington stepped in at the last second and came down on their asking price for Westbrook, and the Lakers backed out at the last second with the Sacramento deal and went with Washington's offer. But that they had pretty much already done everything but signed the paperwork with the league office on that.
Yeah. I remember it was like reported as if it was going to happen too.
Well,
It
yeah.
was very weird.
Well, Woes reported that that was the trade to the Kings, and then
Yeah.
later it was like, oh, Westbrook's being traded to the Lakers, and we were like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. But see, maybe, dude, I don't know. Maybe playing with Russell Westbrook really makes LeBron want to play with Dame, He wanted Westbrook, supposedly, and we see how that works out. Maybe he wants to play with a real point guard, an elite point guard. He misses playing with Kyrie, so, he'll play with a better version of Kyrie. I don't know. See, I can see LeBron enjoying playing next to, like, Dame and Ant if we were able to keep him. Obviously, to get LeBron in a trade, we'd need, like, a top 3 pick, bare minimum, and then another pick, and then might have to make the Chicago pick unprotected so we can trade a future pick, like... We'd have to really give up a lot of value because LeBron's obviously going to have a ton of value. But, if I think it would come down to, like, teams where LeBron doesn't want to play aren't going to trade for him. So I think it's a situation where LeBron, in a way, could kind of control his own destiny. And it's just like, I don't know if I always just wonder with the Nike connection if that matters at all. Because LeBron obviously is very integrated with Nike. And
I'll just say it hasn't mattered for a single time, I don't think, in the history of Nike being here. So
yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I just wonder if there's a way where it could matter. Because, like, LeBron is pursuing off-court interests and whatnot.
I think it's more likely... I'm pretty sure LeBron wants to be an owner of a team when he's done. And I know you can't really technically give him ownership of a team while he's still playing, but
so if he gets traded here, we can.
I think it would be a situation where, he is under the table promised some sort of like Jody Allen's going to sell the team to you and your group, your Rich Paul group, in 5 years or something when you retire, like I think that would be more appealing to LeBron than actually like the Nike connection or anything.
Yeah, and I think he'd want to play with Dame. I feel like Dame is one of the guys he's never played with where like he'd want to play next to him. He would want to play with him, and then assuming we could hopefully keep him in the deal. I mean, that's a fun backcourt to play with, I think. But, I don't know. Obviously, just wild speculation here. That's kind of been the story for today.
Man, LeBron playmaking for those two.
Ugh.
It's crazy.
The thing is, like, LeBron's shot really well from 3 this year, hasn't he? Like, let me look up his stats. Yeah, 36%. I think it was a little bit higher, but, I mean, LeBron the past couple years been 36% three-point shooter. Like, he's and that's on 6 attempts a game. This year he's shooting 8 attempts per game, 36%. So scored 30 points per game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 36% from 3.
Was 60,
62. I mean, bro, I will take that sort of stat pad. You kidding me? Like, give me that, dude. That, yeah. I mean, if you had Dame, Ant, LeBron, I don't know who your starting 4 is there. You know, sign somebody, just a 3-and-D guy, and then Nurkic. I feel like that's the team to beat in the West. Is at least in the same tier as Phoenix and Golden State. So, not going to happen, but, you know, it's fun to think about.
Of course, yeah.
You know, just hopefully one of these guys comes available. But here's the thing. It comes down to, if not, you gotta have plans. You gotta have contingency plans for everything. You gotta have a plan for if, you know, you use both draft picks, or if you get... After lottery day, if we end up with the 4th pick, you got to have some, you know, ideas about trading down, or maybe trying to trade up, or I don't know. You just want to basically have multiple plans on the table, because there's certain plans that won't be feasible, that you won't be able to pull off. You got to be able to pivot to different things. So time this back.
Or our plan is already set for Jeremy Grant.
Oh God, no, nope. That's disgusting. God, what if we got the Pelicans pick, and then Detroit was like, well, you know, you guys might not have that pick, so if you guys get that pick, then we'll trade you Jeremy Grant, but we're gonna wait until the offseason to see if you get that pick, and Cronin would probably just like, all right, and we have a deal in place where if we get the pick, it's for Grant.
Yeah, and they'll phrase it like, oh, we traded CJ for Grant and Josh Hart.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. You traded a star for 2 role players. Good job. Oh, God. Dude, I do not want Jeremy Grant on this freaking basketball team. I'm so scared. Like, of that being our off-season plan. I hate even joking about it, because it just gets me upset. If the pick falls to 12, it's more palatable, but oh God, dude. Why'd you have to bring up Jeremy Grant? I was having fun thinking about LeBron and thinking about Jalen Brown and thinking about
you
Siakam.
just happened to say we can't have like a set plan, but our plan might already be set.
I mean, but here's the thing, you still have the 1st round pick. Like, I feel like they're gonna probably try and shop that in trades too, so you gotta be thinking about, okay, who are your targets, and then what assets are you willing to give up for them? What's your starting offer going to be? Because it shouldn't be as high as your final offer. That's negotiating 101. And then obviously they've been scouting guys, trying to figure out which draft prospects they like, if they go the draft route and actually use the picks. Obviously, if they don't get the Pelicans pick, that's something out the window, so they have to be able to pivot from that. So just got to have different ideas in mind. And we've been talking a lot about them on these postgame shows, so it's nice that we're up to 6th. I mean, only hope is that, you know, we get a top 3 pick, and then hopefully don't trade it for Jeremy Grant. What if we traded like the 3rd pick for Jeremy?
I'm sick of these trades. Like, I either want to go super young or go like all in on someone, and I feel like Grant's like the Larry Nance and Robert Covington trade levels, where we're going to be regretting it in a couple years. So I'd rather, I made this point a couple shows ago, and I am seriously not joking. I would rather just draft whoever we draft with the Pelicans pick or re-sign like a CJ Ellaby for the minimum than to go after someone like Grant, who you're going to have to spend all this money. We fought so hard and had to give all these players away because their value sucked, but then we're going to go right away a few months later and trade for a guy, giving up a high pick, and then also signing him to a big contract that people are going to say in a few years is a negative value, and we're going to have to give him away to some other team like the Clippers and get nothing in return but stupid Eric Bledsoe.
And then for the fourth offseason in a row, people will be saying Anthony Simons is going to leave.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. But, okay, so yeah, Jeremy Grant's fine if you had him at like the MLE or, 15 million or whatever.
He's just a role player, though.
Either you're signing him to a 25 million a year extension, or he's a free agent after 1 year and you're losing him possibly. So either scenario I don't think is good. So I don't really like that. I don't really like that as an option. I'd much rather just take it like Jeremy Sohan, for example. I feel like as early as year 2 could be better than Jeremy Grant.
If he just figures out how to shoot, he will be.
And he's like 5 million. He's going to be like at the most like 3 or 4 million that year, right? In year 2. And you're paying, instead of paying Jeremy Grant 25 million a year, you're paying him 20 million less. And so that's just how I feel.
Oh, I have already been annoyed too much on the stream. We shouldn't have started talking about Jeremy Grant.
Yeah.
But no, not by that logic. CJ McCollum was a role player. Show me where Jeremy Grant can go to a team and make that team better by averaging 26 and almost 7 assists. Jeremy Grant went to a bad team that stayed terrible and is putting up numbers because he's on a bad team. CJ McCollum puts up a star caliber impact on good teams. Okay? Jeremy Grant, the last time he played for a playoff team, was a 13-point per game scorer who can't rebound and didn't play make. That's not the same as CJ McCollum when CJ McCollum was playing for the Blazers. Like, no, CJ McCollum is not a role player because Jeremy Grant's a role player. Jeremy Grant on a good team is a third or fourth option at best. That's a role player. People say, oh, well, Jeremy Grant was almost an all-star. He's a borderline all-star. People were saying that same exact thing about Norman Powell the year we traded for him, because Norman Powell was averaging about 20 points per game. On a better team than Jeremy Grant's averaging, 20 points per game on? How many points per game is Jeremy Grant averaging? And Norman Powell was more efficient. Yeah, Jeremy Grant's averaging 19 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, shooting under 43% from the field, and 35.8% from 3. His true shooting percentage is 55.6%, which is average at best. Defensively, he has not been that good of a defender in Detroit like he was in Denver or previous stops. Okay? That is absolutely not the guy that we need. Like, Jeremy Powell was a better pickup at the time than Jeremy Grant would be. He was more efficient, averaging more points per game, similar defender. Go ahead, Eric.
I have a question for you, Tori, and chat, feel free to answer as well. I'll give you a player next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, on a bad team he's on,
yep,
he averaged 20 points per game, okay?
Mm-hmm.
5.4 rebounds, 4.3 assists, with good defense, 1.2 steals, and a really good perimeter defender. Do you like that?
How tall are they?
I don't want to give it away, but let's just say it's a wing player, a guard / wing.
4.3 assists per game, you said?
Yeah.
Can't be Gary Trent Jr. I mean, I would take that over Jeremy Grant, absolutely.
All right, so chat, would you take that player over Jeremy Grant? Because he's putting up, better numbers on...
Who are you talking? Who is this player?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm just gonna wait a second to see if anyone guesses. It's a average player, maybe slightly above average player on a really bad team right now.
Is this a per 36 stat?
Nope, it's not a per 36. It's what they actually are averaging for their team this year.
Who are you talking about? You're talking about... Hold on, I need to figure out who this is.
20 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, over 4 assists.
Okay, hold up. I need to figure this out.
It's more of a guard than a wing.
It's not Franz Wagner. He's not averaging that many points per game.
You're so far off.
You said bad team.
Yeah.
It's more of a guard than a wing.
Terrence Ross doesn't average 20 points a game. Sadiq Bey doesn't average 20 points a game.
And it's not CJ because you said he was a good defender. And like a wing.
Yeah. CJ's a lot closer than...
Okay, huh.
And Toronto, that's because it is one of those three. That is Josh Hart's numbers on the Portland Trailblazers this year.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Okay, yeah.
So,
all right.
So
that's right in front of our faces.
Yes. Huh. So this is my point, right? Everyone who's like, Jeremy Grant's so awesome, he averages 20 points per game. We have a guy we just traded for that averages 20 points a game on our team, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard. Like, you don't even have to be good, right? Like it's crazy. and on way better efficiency than Jeremy Grant. So he's a better rebounder at 6'5" than Jeremy Grant. He's much better playmaker than Jeremy Grant is. He's a better defender than Jeremy Grant is. This is my point. Like, you could probably make the same case about like Brandon Williams or whatever, or who Trendon Watford averaged 16 and 7 for like how many ever the last 2 months that he started or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe it's not 2 months, but you know what I mean. Like, however long he started, he was averaging almost 17 and 7 during that time, off really good defense, good all this kind of stuff. So this is what I'm saying. Like, don't give me this crap that Grant is like just like this magical player that's going to fix everything. He's just another one of these players who is a role player, like Tori's been trying to tell you all along, that went to a good team
or a
bad team and was the man on that team, the first option. He showed that he could be that first option, put up stats, great. How does that help us win games when he comes back and is then being paid $25 million to be a role player when we can find guys for cheap like Trendon Watford on a minimum contract next year, that if he was in that situation in Detroit, 5 or 6 years into his career, could probably average 19 and 4 like Jeremy Grant does,
but
right?
But the thing is, for people, it's not about any sort of context, right? It's just he's a big name. He's a name that people recognize.
Or he's not a guard. Okay.
And other people have said that he's a good player.
Watford, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're arguing that he's not a guard, you completely missed the point. So, yeah. I mean, you illustrated your point about as well as possible, Eric. So,
and I mean,
I absolutely agree. We've been arguing this for a while.
MP says Dame isn't staying for Trendon. And, okay,
Dame isn't leaving if we don't get Jeremy Grant.
What? Okay, I don't think Dame is leaving anyway. I think he's staying. But despite that, yes, it could come down to he wants Jeremy Grant if he's available for the 12th pick or whatever, and that's a deal on the table. And Dame absolutely wants to do that. I mean, I guess we have to live with that, right? Mm-hmm. But how many times does Dame have to also say he doesn't want to play GM, or he's not going to interfere with GM decisions and stuff like that as well? So, like, he can give his input all he wants, but I don't think if the GM tells him, I don't think this is what's best for the team to trade, I think it would be a mistake. I don't think Dame's going to be like, do it or I'm out, type of thing. But if that's what it came down to, sure, please Dame, whatever. And if I can live with that, if that's the reason why we did the trade, is because it comes out that Dame really wanted Jeremy Grant, which is likely the case if we do trade for him. But I just don't want to hear that he's going to help us or he's going to be better. He's going to come in and we're going to say the exact same things we said about Norman Powell, where he should be a better defender than he is. I just don't get it. Like, why isn't he helping our defense out? Like,
yeah.
like, why isn't he trying hard? Like, why isn't he doing these things? why isn't he scoring 20 points a game? Why is his average down to 15? You know, like all this kind of stuff. Just like, so I understand like the Dame situation would come into play, but I just don't think it's the right move for Portland. And I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm 100%, and I'm welcome to people's opinions that like him, but I challenge anyone to look up his defensive like analytics, even going back to the Denver his last year in Denver, where everyone thought he was this amazing defender. And I think you'll find that he was very overrated on that end. But he got up in people's faces and slapped the floor and was aggressive on defense. So everyone thinks he's a good defender for some reason.
Yep. I will say this. I have heard from a source, rumored, who Dame wants. And the name that I heard wasn't Jeremy Grant, but I can't share the name with you. So, but... could be completely wrong, but
is it something we've talked about today?
We've talked about everyone today.
Yeah,
that's your answer.
All right.
So yeah, that's all you guys get. But I wouldn't fully buy into the Jeremy Grant stuff. I wouldn't fully buy into like, oh yeah, that's what we're automatically going to do, because I see some people just acting like it's a foregone conclusion. I would not fully count on that.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but he was born in Portland, lived here 2 months before his dad was traded away from Portland. So I don't even think he considers himself from Portland. Also, I mean, if he wants to come here, that's great. I'm not saying he can't change his mind on this, but he wanted to go to a city that had a rich black history with a black GM and a black coach. Now we can provide the black coach part, I guess, but in terms of black culture and stuff, Portland, for a player that cares about that kind of stuff, isn't the greatest thing. I mean, there's probably a couple of cities that are worse than Portland in the NBA, but not by much, right? So yeah, it's just a situation where he obviously cares about that stuff. So I can't really see him being like, oh, you know what? I was born in Portland. I want to go back and celebrate all that rich history. When that's why he went to Detroit in the first place. Yeah.
I mean, and if the dude wants to be the number one option on a bad team and doesn't want to be a role player, it's another reason why Portland shouldn't go after him, because that's very possible. He didn't want to stay in Denver and be a role player. He wanted to go to a bad team and be the number one guy. My point I made earlier, the Phoenix Suns are the best team in the league because they have players that play their roles extremely well and they embrace their roles and they're extremely cohesive. You do not build a contender if you have role players that don't embrace their roles and don't get after it. That's the struggle with Norman Powell. Robert Covington started slacking off defensively, making silly mistakes he's never made in his career on that end. In Portland, when they were bought in and like locked in and focusing on just playing the role, playing the right way, they started off 10-1 at home. But what? They started off 1-10 on the road? I mean, we already saw it earlier this season with Portland, what happens if you bring in players like that or have players like that, how, you'll see, when they're bought in and just kind of going into games and playing on their role, you can see how good the team could be, but they are not doing it consistently enough to make you have any chance of winning a championship, so I don't want Jeremy Grant. I feel like it, as you said, I feel like it would be another Norman Powell, Robert Covington type of situation.
And so Phoenix has a player that was also mentioned in chat earlier. I don't think he's going to be available for trade, but they took him with the 11th pick. You and I both kind of snickered. Yep. And that's Cam Johnson. And he has absolutely turned into, this is third season. So he's turned into a capable player. He helped them out in his second season, right? And that's like the blueprint that Dame talked about in that interview. with Shannon Sharp, it's like we have most likely going to be the 11th, 12th pick, right? We talked about that earlier.
Yep.
If we get that pick, so it's not. I mean, people always say like, "Oh, you can't go young with Dame," but like, why can't we get a player like that in a draft that's to me similar to that draft? Like a kind of player like that that will help us out in like maybe not right away, but like he certainly would help within a couple of years.
Yeah. Sadly, there isn't really a Cam Johnson type of player in this draft outside of the top 10, unfortunately, but I absolutely agree with the sentiment.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to find like a that tall of a forward that can shoot, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean like Keegan Murray I guess could be that, but I don't. He's not going to be there at 11 or 12. Um,
Because that's the thing is, like, Cam Johnson was looked at as a late first at best, and then he got taken 11th. That's why me and Eric were laughing at it, and then he's been a steal. So it's like, I'm going through and kind of, like, trying to find the best shooting, like, guy that could play power forward, small forward, power forward. That's maybe late first, early second. Because that's the thing. Just if they figure out, okay, how to be a solid defender, because Cam Johnson wasn't looked at as a good defender coming to the league, but he's been solid, right? And then he knocks down threes at 45%. He's a three and honestly at this point you could probably call him a 3-and-D guy. Okay, he plays good team defense like pretty much everybody does there in Phoenix. So,
well, he's developed a bit of like off the dribble like creation too, which has been I never thought he would have done that. So
yeah, but there's no like. A lot of the forwards you see are like Harrison Ingram isn't really a shooter. Justin Lewis isn't really a shooter like that. If you go a little bit higher, like David Roddy doesn't have that sort of size, but he shot, 44%?
I mean, Justin Lewis did. He improved his 3-point. That's the Marquette guy, right?
Yeah.
He did start shooting a lot of threes this year and maybe could expand on that, but
I mean maybe a Christian Brown depending on where he measures.
Yeah,
he shot 39% from 3 this year, but he's listed as 6'7".
That's
just
the
a
tough part
weird
for me,
draft,
like,
honestly.
because I think Agbaji's going to shoot really well in the pros.
Yeah,
but he's I mean obviously he's not going to play power forward, but maybe small forward, but
yeah, that's the thing is like we laughed at that, but thinking back it's like you have an absolute sniper 6'8" who can play small forward or power forward. Like that's not like thinking back we shouldn't have thought it was that crazy. I mean the closest thing you could get is Patrick Baldwin Jr., but he shot the ball terribly in college, so I don't trust that.
Because I mean at the time I didn't think Cam was going to be anything but a shooter, and he was kind of on the older side, right?
Yeah.
I think he was already like 21 or 22 when the draft happened. So, like him and Nas flipped positions in that draft. That was the funny part. But yeah.
And honestly, who would you rather have right now?
Gosh, that's a tough question.
I feel like if we were Suns fans, we'd be saying Cam Johnson. I feel like as Blazer fans, we probably say Nasir Little.
I mean, it's someone who we haven't really talked about much since he went down, but Nas was trending in a very positive direction.
Yeah, he was. I just don't know how much I buy it.
That's a good one, P-Town. Jovic could be that guy.
Jovic could be that guy. He just doesn't shoot anywhere like Cam Johnson did coming into the draft. I don't put as much stock in his...
He's got just as pretty of a shot, though, to where it could...
If Jovic can figure out how to shoot the ball, he'll be a good role player. Because he can pass and handle and is 6'10". Like, that's why I'd be willing to trade down, if we have the 12th or 11th pick, the Pelicans pick, I'd be down to trade down... I don't know. The Spurs right now have the 20th and 23 picks. Like, if we had the 12th pick, I'd trade down for... I feel like you'd need a little bit more. I feel like 20 and 23 is, like, close, but not quite enough. I'd rather trade earlier, though. Like 12 for 15 and 30. Like, that's the thing. If you really like Jovic, trade down from 12 and get 15 and 30 from OKC, and then take Jovic at 15.
Yeah.
Or at 15, if you think he's really going to fall, or there's a number of guys that you like on the board that are there at 15, then maybe you trade 15 down for 20 and 23 if San Antonio's willing to do that. You know what I mean? Obviously, it depends on what teams want in the draft. Pacers currently have 17 and 31, so that's another trade down possibility. I'm just kind of like looking at like potential trade down combinations here. You could always trade down for like a pick and a future pick, so you could trade down like 12 for maybe 18 and get a future first. But yeah, I mean, Jovic should be interesting. This is just a weird draft in terms of like, in certain parts of the draft, you have a lot of one position available. It seems like at top 3, you have power forwards. Then after that, you have a bunch of wings. Or like at 4, you have a guard, and then you got Keegan Murray. But like you got like AJ Griffin, Shaedon Sharpe, Benedict Mathurin, Johnny Davis, like wings. And then in the mid-first, there's a lot of wings as well. Like you're talking about Agbaji, Branham, Kendall Brown, Beauchamp, however you say his name, Jovic, Wendell Moore. I'm just going off a mock draft. Christian Brown, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Jaden Hardy, like a lot of a lot of shooting guard, small forward type of players. I don't know. This is kind of a weird draft to me. I don't know why, but I think just in terms of the way the positions shake out, you don't really have a lot of point guards. The second best point guard in the draft, just looking at this mock, is Kennedy Chandler, who's mocked at 27. That's the number 2 point guard, supposedly, so I guess that's good for us, though, Eric.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else for the stream?
No, thank you, everyone, for watching, and hope you all have a good night. Hope you enjoyed CJ's return to Portland as much as Tori and I did. It was cool being there and seeing him come back and enjoying the crowd, but also that the Blazers didn't mess up their tank. So, but they played very hard and almost won once again, which is perfect.
Yep. Let me take off a couple final donos, actually. Shout out Alvaro, $5 dono. Appreciate you, Alvaro. He says, giving up an 18 to 19-year-old lotto pick on a cheap contract for a 28 will be 29-year-old Jeremy Grant. LOL, like, come on. Appreciate that, Alvaro. Yeah,
we know Alvy loves the draft. So.
Yeah, Alvy loves the draft, man. Appreciate you, Alvaro. And then Chris Brandlin, $5 dono. Appreciate you, man. He says, what about EJ Liddell? I just don't know if his game will translate just because he's an undersized power forward. And it's always tough to predict those guys. And I don't see him being the defender like a Draymond is, or, that sort of playmaker.
Yeah, I mean, he can fill it up, but like you said, he's kind of a tweener, which scares me. I don't think he's quick enough to play small forward and probably not tall enough. I mean, I guess if his measurements are good. Another one of those guys that could rise up boards. But
if we're talking about him as like a Cam Johnson equivalent, he's supposedly has less size than Cam Johnson and is a 37% shooter from 3, which is solid, but not, the level of marksmanship of Cam Johnson.
See, he screams like a sixth man, like scorer off the bench type at his peak. Which isn't bad. Like, you need those kind of players, but I'd almost rather just draft someone with higher upside and sign a player that's mentioned several times in chat here, with our mid-level exception, and that's TJ Warren. And just if we needed a forward scorer off the bench, I'd rather go for that route and then have a higher upside player with it, whether that's Jovic or any number of, Koloko or any of those kind of guys. Like, I would just rather have a higher upside guy than Liddell. But, I mean, he's a fine player. I just don't think he's necessarily a good player for our needs when we need our forwards to be super athletic, like defenders and stuff like that.
Yep, agreed. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap up the stream. We'll have an episode of Blazers Uprise Live tomorrow. That's our second channel. If you're not yet subscribed, there's a link at the top of the description. We stream Mondays and Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's going to change soon. Let me look up exactly when that's going to change, Eric.
Well, next Sunday so after next week.
Yeah. So we have 2 more weeks left, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So 2 more weeks left of picks against the spread.
Well, the regular season ends next week, so 3 shows left.
Yeah, let me hold on. Let me look up a calendar. Yeah, so the final day is Sunday, right?
Yeah.
What time do games start that day? Because I've seen like 9 a.m. Pacific time or something weird.
Yeah, I think Sunday always has early games, but yeah, something like that.
Because we always do, or last year we did picks against the spread for the final day. But what time did we stream that stream?
It might not have been a Sunday, or I think we might have done it the night before.
Yeah, huh.
I think we did it like on a post-game show or something.
We might have. I don't know. It would be cool to pick the final day because there's 15 games. Just gives people a chance going into things. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so episode tomorrow, Thursday, and then we will. I'm losing my train of thought. The next week we'll have it 3:30 p.m. Mondays, Thursdays. Then in the off season we're going to be streaming on our second channel at 9:30 p.m. We switched to a later start time for the off season because we don't have picks against the spread. It's a little bit easier to do it kind of at the end of the day. So during the off season, that's the only channel we're going to be streaming on outside of big streams. We'll have the draft lottery stream, free agency stream, and draft stream here on the main channel. But if you want to catch us live in the off season, make sure to subscribe to our second channel, Blazers Uprise Live. Link at the top of the description below. Hopefully we can catch you tomorrow at about 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. Anything else?
No, thank everyone for watching. Hope you have a good evening.
Yep, we will catch you tomorrow or maybe on another post-game show. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.